13 gospel legends who tried to hide their secret gay affairs. Did you know that some of gospel music's brightest stars were living double lives behind the pulpit? From the king of gospel James Cleveland, to the trailblazing godmother of rock and roll Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and even powerhouse groups like the Dixie Hummingbirds, these legends lit up stages and inspired millions with their voices. But away from the spotlight, they carried secrets the church never wanted revealed. Hidden romances, unspoken desires, and forbidden affairs that clashed with the image of holiness they projected. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 13 gospel icons who fought to keep their secret gay relationships in the shadows. James Cleveland. James Cleveland is often hailed as the king of gospel, and that crown was no exaggeration. Born in 1931 on Chicago's South Side, he grew up immersed in the rich sounds of church choirs and Sunday morning hymns. Life wasn't easy. His family struggled to get by, and as a child he developed vocal issues that left his voice permanently raspy and deep. But instead of seeing it as a setback, Cleveland leaned into it. That gritty, unconventional tone became his signature, instantly recognizable, unforgettable, and unlike anything the polished gospel singers of his era could deliver. By the 1950s and 60s, Cleveland was no longer just another choir boy, he was shaping the very future of gospel music. He collaborated with giants like Clara Ward, Mahalia Jackson, and the Caravans. He even founded the Southern California Community Choir, which grew into one of the most celebrated gospel ensembles in the world. His concerts were more than performances, they were spiritual spectacles, part revival, part grand musical production. And with his bold vision, Cleveland fused traditional gospel with the flavors of jazz and pop, creating a sound that spoke not only to the faithful but to mainstream audiences as well. His pen was just as powerful as his voice, crafting and arranging hundreds of songs, including timeless classics like Peace Be Still, still sung in churches across America today. But behind the music and the pulpit, James Cleveland was a man shrouded in mystery. His personal life remained fiercely private, and whispers followed him everywhere. For decades, there were rumors that Cleveland had relationships with men. Stories whispered in backrooms, shared quietly among those who knew him best. After his death in 1991, from AIDS-related complications, those rumors grew louder, fueling endless debate within the gospel world. In an era when the church was unforgiving toward homosexuality, Cleveland, if the rumors were true, would have had no choice but to live in silence, protecting his truth behind closed doors. Some say he shared his home with male companions. Others insist that much of the gospel community knew but chose not to speak about it. Whether fact or rumor, one thing is undeniable: James Cleveland left behind a legacy as complex as it was groundbreaking. An icon whose music lifted millions, even as the man himself carried secrets the world is still trying to understand. Wilmer Little Axe Broadnax. Wilmer Little Axe Broadnax lived one of the most mysterious and extraordinary lives in gospel history. Born in 1916, Broadnax rose to fame in the mid-20th century as a powerhouse quartet singer. His soaring high tenor, described as angelic, piercing, and unforgettable, helped groups like the Spirit of Memphis Quartet and the Fairfield Four leave their mark on gospel music. Audiences were captivated by the emotional punch he brought to every note, and within the gospel community, Broadnax earned deep respect for his unmatched style. But what truly set him apart wasn't just his voice, it was the hidden truth about his life. For decades, very few knew the full story. Broadnax was a transgender man. Assigned female at birth, he lived his entire adult life as a man at a time when being openly transgender was almost unheard of, especially in the deeply conservative gospel world. This truth remained carefully guarded for years, shielded from a community that often met difference with judgment or rejection. Historians suggest Broadnax also had same-gender relationships, though they were never publicly acknowledged. In a world where church and gospel music were inseparable, these parts of his private life had to remain in the shadows. Friends later revealed how fiercely he worked to keep his personal life separate from his career, protecting both his artistry and his identity. During the 1940s and 1950s, the golden era of gospel quartets, Broadnax's voice helped define the sound of the movement. Fans admired his talent without realizing the private battles he carried. Yet, as time passed, the spotlight dimmed. His career slowed, and Broadnax gradually faded from public view. In 1992, the gospel world lost one of its most enigmatic figures. Today, Wilmer Little Axe Broadnax is remembered not only for his angelic voice but also as a quiet pioneer who lived authentically in a time when doing so came at great personal risk. Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Sister Rosetta Tharpe wasn't just ahead of her time, she was in a league of her own. Born in 1915 in Cotton Plant, Arkansas, she picked up a guitar almost as soon as she could walk. With a preacher for a mother, Rosetta's earliest stages were church pulpits, where her voice and raw talent quickly set her apart. But by the 1930s, she was breaking barriers no one else dared to touch. Rosetta fused gospel with blues and the fiery spark of what would later become rock and roll. Long before the term rock star even existed, she was electrifying audiences with her guitar, strumming it with a swagger and energy that shocked people. Especially because women, and certainly gospel women, weren't supposed to play like that. It's no wonder she's forever remembered as the godmother of rock and roll. Her songs, like This Train and Up Above My Head, made her a household name. She toured relentlessly, drawing crowds who couldn't believe their eyes. And the greats of rock, Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Chuck Berry, would later admit they borrowed from her blueprint. But Rosetta's personal life was just as bold as her music. In 1951, she staged a wedding at a packed baseball stadium, performing a concert for thousands of fans as part of the ceremony. Yet behind the headlines, there was a side she had to keep hidden. Biographers believe Rosetta also shared deep, romantic ties with women, including gospel singer Marie Knight, her closest companion on the road. The two toured together, recorded together, and were nearly inseparable. Many suspected their bond was more than friendship, but in the strict world of the church, that truth had to stay in the shadows. As the years went on, her health declined. Diabetes took its toll, eventually leading to the loss of her leg. By the time she passed away in 1973, Rosetta's contributions had been largely overlooked. The world had moved on, forgetting that before there was Elvis or Little Richard, there was Sister Rosetta blazing the trail. It took decades for her legacy to finally get the recognition it deserved. In 2018, she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, proof that the thunder she unleashed on her guitar still echoes across music history. Willie Mayford Smith. Willie Mayford Smith was born in 1904 in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, before her family moved to St. Louis, Missouri. Raised in the church, she found her voice in gospel music at a young age. By the 1920s and 30s, she had already become known as one of the most commanding female voices in gospel history. What set her apart was her unique blend of preaching and singing. She didn't just sing hymns, she preached between the verses, filling every performance with a fiery spirit that left audiences deeply moved and forever changed. Because of her influence, she became known as the matriarch of gospel, training and mentoring the very voices that would shape the future of the genre. Giants like Mahalia Jackson, Clara Ward, and even James Cleveland looked up to her as a guide. Smith believed gospel was more than hitting the right notes. It was about delivering the message straight to the soul. Her passion transformed gospel singing into something richer, more emotional, and deeply personal. Through her leadership at the National Convention of Gospel Choirs and Choruses, she helped groom generations of singers, teaching them not only how to perform but how to minister through song. Yet, behind the pulpit, Smith's personal life remained a mystery. Unlike Mahalia Jackson, she never stepped into mainstream stardom, refusing to trade her church roots for commercial fame. Scholars and gospel historians have suggested that she may have had intimate same-gender relationships, hinted at in biographies and whispered about in private circles. But in an era when being openly gay in the church was unthinkable, Smith never addressed these rumors publicly. For her, life was not about wealth or celebrity. She chose simplicity, dedicating herself to the church and the music that defined her. It wasn't until the 1980s that she received national recognition, appearing in the acclaimed documentary Say Amen, Somebody. Viewers were finally able to see her wit, warmth, and authority as a true mother figure of gospel music. Willie Mayford Smith lived to the age of 95, passing away in 1994. She left behind more than songs. She left a legacy of spirit, resilience, and a voice that forever changed the sound of gospel. Alex Bradford. Alex Bradford wasn't just a gospel singer, he was a force of nature. Born in 1927 in the deep south of Alabama, he showed star power before he even hit his teenage years. By the time most kids were riding bikes, young Alex was already known as the singing preacher, delivering fiery little sermons that would suddenly burst into song. When he moved to Chicago, he walked straight into the beating heart of gospel music, where raw talent was everywhere. But Bradford quickly stood out. By the 1950s, leading his group the Bradford Specials, he had become one of the biggest names in gospel. His performances were electric. He jumped, clapped, danced, and drove the choir into soul-stirring frenzies that left audiences gasping. His breakout hit Too Close to Heaven sold over 1 million copies, an unheard of success in gospel at the time. Fans loved how he blended deep church tradition with a dash of showbiz flair. And his impact stretched far beyond gospel pews. Little Richard and Ray Charles both admitted that Alex Bradford's wild stage style helped shape their own. But while his public career soared, whispers followed him in private. Rumors swirled that Bradford had secret relationships with men, an unspeakable scandal in the rigid church world of the mid-20th century. He never addressed the gossip, But behind-the-scenes stories suggest the immense pressure he carried to hide his true self while standing in the spotlight. Bradford's talent carried him across the globe. He toured Europe and Africa, spreading gospel's fire to audiences who had never experienced it before. Later, he even broke barriers on Broadway, starring in the hit musical Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope, a bold leap from the church pulpit to the theater stage. But just when it seemed like he still had so much more to give, tragedy struck. In 1978, Alex Bradford's extraordinary life ended far too soon. He was only 51. Yet his voice, his energy, and his fearless artistry continue to echo, not only in gospel music but in every singer who dares to turn the stage into something unforgettable. Bessie Griffin. Bessie Griffin was born in 1922 in New Orleans, Louisiana, a city where music floated through the streets like air itself. From childhood, she was immersed in the sounds of jazz, blues, and gospel, and by the time she was a teenager, her voice, rich, powerful, and overflowing with emotion, was already turning heads in church choirs. By the 1940s, she had carved out her place as a rising gospel soloist. She would go on to sing with groups like the Caravans and share stages with icons such as Mahalia Jackson and Clara Ward. Audiences adored her because her voice could glide effortlessly from the deepest soul notes to bright, soaring highs. Her performances often moved people to tears. She didn't just sing gospel, she made you feel it in your bones. But behind the music, Bessie's personal life carried a quiet complexity. Scholars and friends have suggested she may have shared intimate relationships with women, bonds that went beyond friendship. In a time when such truths had to remain hidden, Bessie never spoke openly about it. Still, those close to her noticed the depth of her attachments and whispered of romances lived in secrecy. This hidden side of her life was not unusual for gospel artists of her era. The very church that gave them a platform was also the place where being open about sexuality could mean ruin. For Bessie, the cost of her gift may have been a kind of loneliness, pouring her soul into gospel music on stage, yet never fully free to live as herself once the spotlight dimmed. Mabel King. Mabel King may be remembered by most as an actress, but long before Hollywood lights ever found her, her roots were planted deep in gospel and spiritual music. Born in 1932 in Charleston, South Carolina, and raised in the heart of Harlem, New York, she grew up surrounded by the black church, where music wasn't just art, it was life. Her voice was a natural powerhouse, carrying that unmistakable gospel fire into everything she later touched. In the 1960s and 70s, Mabel dazzled audiences on screen, with unforgettable roles in The Wiz and the hit sitcom What's Happening. But before that fame, she was a gospel and soul performer, channeling her church-trained voice into every note, commanding stages with a boldness that made her impossible to ignore. Colleagues often said she could steal the spotlight without even trying, her energy filling every room. Behind that spotlight, however, lived quieter whispers. Within entertainment and gospel circles, people speculated about Mabel's private life, rumors linking her to relationships with women. Nothing was ever confirmed, and like many artists of her era, she kept those truths locked away. In those days, an admission like that could have ended a career overnight. Her later years brought heavy trials. Mabel battled diabetes, a struggle that led to the amputation of both legs and forced her out of the public eye. In 1999, she passed away, leaving behind both triumph and tragedy. Though her acting career often overshadowed her gospel beginnings, that powerful, church-born voice never left her. It remained the thread tying her legacy back to where it all began. The Dixie Hummingbirds. The Dixie Hummingbirds aren't just another gospel quartet, they're living legends. Born in the late 1920s in Greenville, South Carolina, the group began as a handful of teenagers singing in small churches. But what started as youthful devotion soon grew into one of the most powerful and influential gospel groups of all time. By the 1940s and 50s, the Hummingbirds had already carved out a reputation for their silky harmonies, sharp style, and electrifying stage presence. They recorded with major labels, toured the nation, and raised the bar for every gospel act that followed. Their sound went far beyond church walls, inspiring iconic groups like the Temptations and the Four Tops. Their crossover moment came when they backed Paul Simon on his hit Loves Me Like a Rock, proving their gospel spirit could shake the mainstream. But fame in gospel circles often came with whispers. Behind the soaring harmonies and polished performances, rumors quietly circulated that some members might have been living double lives, hiding same-sex relationships that could never be spoken of publicly. In a world where the church and gospel music were inseparable, even the faintest suspicion could destroy a career. So the Dixie Hummingbirds, like so many others, chose silence, keeping the focus on music that was pure, powerful, and rooted in faith. And yet, none of the whispers could dim their brilliance. The Hummingbirds went on to win a Grammy, tour the world, and continue performing for decades, passing their name and legacy on to new generations. Their story is one of endurance, excellence, and unwavering devotion to gospel music, even if behind the curtain, there were secrets the public was never meant to see. Rasberry Singers. Rasberry Singers may not have been a household name, but his fingerprints are all over gospel music. He wasn't known for standing center stage with a microphone in hand. Instead, he built his legacy behind the scenes, as a songwriter and composer whose music shaped generations of worship. His most enduring work, Only What You Do for Christ Will Last, has echoed through church walls for decades. That one song alone cemented his place in gospel history because it captured the very heart of the faith. Material things fade, but service to God endures forever. Rasberry's writing style was simple yet soul-stirring. His songs were crafted for choirs, easy to sing, but rich in meaning. During the 1960s and 70s, countless choirs brought his words to life, and his name became synonymous with spirit-filled, thoughtful songwriting. To this day, his music is still printed in hymnals and sung in Sunday services, a testament to the timeless power of his pen. But like so many in gospel, Rasberry's private life carried whispers that never made it to the pulpit. In church circles, quiet rumors swirled that he may have had relationships with men. He never confirmed it, nor did he deny it. Being a composer rather than a star singer allowed him to remain somewhat hidden, living in the shadows while his songs took center stage. Still, the fact that his name surfaces in conversations about hidden sexuality in gospel music reveals just how deep and widespread these unspoken struggles were. For many artists, whether preachers, singers, or songwriters, the church offered no safe space to live authentically. Rasberry's story is not just about music. It's also about the secret battles fought in silence, even by those who gave the world songs of faith, hope, and eternal promise. Clara Ward. Clara Ward wasn't just a gospel singer, she was a force of nature. Rising to fame in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, she became one of the brightest stars the gospel world had ever seen. Born in 1924 in Philadelphia, Clara was raised in the heart of church life, guided by her powerhouse mother, Gertrude Ward. Together, they created the Ward Singers, a group that would forever change gospel history. With their bold style and powerful harmonies, they blazed a trail across America and even overseas, bringing a kind of gospel fire that audiences had never witnessed before. At the center of it all was Clara. Her voice was smooth yet commanding, polished yet overflowing with emotion. She had that rare ability to make every song feel personal, like she was singing directly to you. Add to that her glamorous style and magnetic stage presence, and Clara became more than a singer, she was a star. With hits like Surely God Is Able, the Ward Singers helped define the golden age of female gospel groups. But behind the dazzling smile and the standing ovations, Clara's private life told a more complicated story. Whispers within gospel circles hinted at deep secrets, that her closest relationships were not always the ones society expected. Some biographers suggest she had intimate bonds with women, a truth she could never reveal openly in the conservative church world of the 50s and 60s. At the same time, her mother's firm control over both her career and personal choices made Clara's life even more complex, forcing her to live in the shadow of unspoken rules. As the years passed, Clara's health began to falter. Strokes and illness slowed her once unstoppable career, and in 1973, at just 48 years old, she was gone. Yet her legacy endures. Clara Ward proved that gospel singers could be international stars, opening doors for women in gospel and setting a standard of artistry, power, and presence that continues to inspire generations. Albertina Walker. Albertina Walker, born in 1929 on the south side of Chicago, rose to become nothing less than the queen of gospel. Her journey began in the church choir as a young girl, but by her 20s she was already rubbing shoulders with giants like Mahalia Jackson. In the 1950s, Albertina made a bold move. She formed her own group, the Caravans. That group didn't just make history, it shaped it. Under her leadership, the Caravans became a gospel powerhouse, launching the careers of legends like Shirley Caesar, Inez Andrews, and Dorothy Norwood. Albertina wasn't just a singer, she was a mentor, a leader, and a force of nature. Her booming contralto voice could shake the walls of a sanctuary, and her commanding presence on stage made her unforgettable. Yet behind the spotlight, her private life remained guarded. Whispers among those close to her suggested she may have had relationships that never saw the light of day, possibly with women. Like many gospel stars of her generation, she wrestled with the unspoken battle between personal truth and the church's strict moral code. Still, nothing could pull Albertina away from her calling. Opportunities came for her to cross over into the commercial music world, but she refused, keeping her feet firmly planted in gospel because she believed that's where God had placed her. Her dedication was rewarded with a Grammy, countless honors, and a career that lasted well into her 80s. In 2010, at the age of 81, Albertina Walker passed away, leaving behind a towering legacy as one of gospel music's most beloved matriarchs. Whether or not the rumors of her private life were true, her story reflects the hidden struggles so many gospel artists endured. Struggles of identity, faith, and authenticity in a world that demanded perfection. Through it all, Albertina's voice, her leadership, and her unshakable devotion to gospel music cemented her place as a true legend.
Ernestine B., Washington.
Ernestine B., Washington was one of gospel's hidden powerhouses in the mid-20th century, though her name doesn't shine as brightly today as it deserves to. Born in the early 1900s, she carved out her legacy on the revival circuit and through recordings in the 1940s and 50s. Her voice was thunderous and unrestrained, equal parts fire, heartbreak, and Holy Spirit. Ernestine could take a plain hymn and transform it into a soul-stirring performance that left entire congregations weeping, shouting, and praising long after the final note faded. Her recordings, including When the Trumpet Sounds and God Will Take Care of You, became beloved staples in black churches across the country. She thrived especially in Pentecostal and holiness traditions, where her high-energy delivery matched the intensity of spirit-filled worship. But behind her gospel fame, whispers followed her personal life. Some gospel historians suggest Ernestine may have quietly engaged in same-sex relationships, attachment she kept hidden in an era when being openly gay in the church world was unthinkable. To protect both her reputation and her ministry, she kept those bonds private, even as they lingered in the oral histories of gospel communities. For singers like Ernestine, the pulpit offered freedom of voice but demanded silence of heart. Still, none of these private struggles dimmed her devotion. She sang, recorded, and ministered with an energy that lit the path for generations of gospel singers who came after her. Though her name may not echo as loudly as some of her peers, Ernestine B. Washington's fire lives on in the passionate, unrestrained style that continues to shape gospel music today. The Roberta Martin Singers. The Roberta Martin Singers might not ring out like Mahalia Jackson or Clara Ward, but if you know gospel history, her name is whispered with respect among those who truly study the roots of the music. Born in the early 1900s, Myrtle Scott grew up in the church, the only stage where black voices were allowed to shine in those days. Her voice was strong, raw, and filled with conviction, carrying revival tents and Sunday services alike. But unlike the gospel giants who went on to record hit after hit, Scott never got the same opportunities in the studio. Most of her career lived in live performances, in oral tradition, and in the fading memories of those who witnessed her sing. Still, she stood among that powerful generation of gospel women who poured their souls into the music, laying down the foundation that future stars would build upon. But Scott's story doesn't end with her songs. It becomes more complicated when you step into her personal life. In scattered oral histories and whispered interviews with older gospel insiders, her name sometimes surfaces in connection with relationships that went beyond friendship. Researchers believe she may have shared romantic bonds with women. Relationships that had to be hidden in a time when the church was both her sanctuary and her prison. That tension defined the lives of many gospel singers, giving their hearts and voices to the music of the church, while privately carrying lives that didn't fit the church's strict rules. For someone like Scott, who never had fame to shield her, it meant keeping her truth even more deeply in the shadows. So, what part of her story surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed uncovering this hidden chapter of gospel history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss what's coming next.